You can sit up front with the Ringmaster, with the ring-a-ling-a-ding-ding-a-ping master. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 6 of Hatchet Chat. Chop, chop, yo. 6 episodes deep. I want to thank everyone who came in to Dark Carnival Games Con.
Thank you, Heckles.
I want to thank ICP for having me open for them. So dope being able to perform and meeting all sorts of people who said they were watching this very series. So that's fresh as heck. So that's what's up. So we are back with episode 6, The Ringmaster. Whoa! This album came out on March 8th, 1994, and guess what else came out today? The Downward Spiral by 9 Inch Nails, Super Unknown by Soundgarden. You can hear there's kind of this alternative vibe happening right now, and like music is in a very interesting creative place, and this record dropped. Carnival Carnage had sold 10,000 units, so ICP were starting to make money. They were starting to live off their music, and this album would sell 40,000 units pretty quickly within a year, which was a lot, which was helped them get their deal with Jive and led to the Riddle Box and all sorts of stuff. That's later. Let's talk about the freshness of this record. This whole album was produced at the Tempermill Studio in Ferndale, Michigan by Mikey Clark. Now, Mikey Clark had worked on other ICP stuff, but this was the first full-length album Mikey Clark worked on, which is why the production is particularly good, I think, and why it stands out as like one of the best of the Joker's cards and one of ICP's best all-time records. So remember when Violent J had this dream? Remember he had the dream that he saw the Dark Carnival, who's flying above it, and he had this image of like the Joker's cards and everything, and he wanted to mix humor and horror together. Now this album reflects that, because if you look at the back of the tape, there's two sides. There's side A, Heckles, side B, Macabre. And that's interesting because the funny side, comedy and horror, Macabre. And in the introduction, you can hear the scratching. Mikey Clark scratching, you can hear Heckles and Macabre, Heckles and Macabre. So it's that whole duality of ICP, which is so fresh, which is like the two things they do best, humor and horror. So what is the Ringmaster, and how does this fit into the whole mythology? I think this is super awesome. The Ringmaster is the creature you fight when you die, okay? And so depending on your sins and your goodness and badness, the Ringmaster is big or small. So let's say you live a life of purity and goodness. When you die, you fight Ringmaster, and he's little. He's like Morty right here. He's small, right? He's like, oh yeah, I was good. I didn't do that bad stuff. But let's say you live a life smoking crack, abusing people, stealing, being negative, taking away people's karma. You'll fight gigantic Roger Rabbit here. Now, of course, the Ringmaster would be much bigger than this, but you get my metaphor. Good life, bad life. You end having to fight this demon, and that's the Ringmaster. And that's why at the end of the record, are they still in frame? I hope so. At the end of the record, you hear this sample, Ringmaster's word, I have a purpose. I have a purpose. And the purpose is motivating people who have this karmic balance to try to live a good life. Now, what I love so much about ICP, and which I think gives them this universal appeal, is the Jungian archetypes they tap into. So who is Carl Jung, and how does this apply to psychopathic records in ICP? So Freud was a big fan of Carl Jung. He believed in these archetypes like that define society. Joseph Campbell was another man who believed in myths and archetypes and how they reflect true things about humanity. You see that through fairy tales. You see that through like the trickster metaphors through Native American folklore. Like you have the coyote, you have Nancy the spider. Joseph Campbell believes in the sort of archetypes of the villains and heroes throughout human mythology. Carl Jung believed that there was a greater extended universe of archetypes that we all tap into in humanity, and folklores and stories all have this similar theme. Why do I bring this up? When we're studying Carl Jung's works, we can apply this to ICP, and I think what's so dope about the Dark Carnival and a lot of the mythology and the different Joker's cards is each one reflects a different Jungian archetype. So what is the Jungian archetype of Ringmaster? Well, let's look to Egyptian mythology. So what's interesting about this, if we look in the Great Malenko, there's all these pyramids and Egyptian imagery, which makes me think that in a lot of ways, Violent J was inspired by Egyptian mythology. So when you die, you go into a place and the Egyptian god Osiris is chilling there, waiting, right? And he weighs your sins of your life against a feather or the tiny figure of Ma'at. So let's say you lived a life that was pure. Ma'at would be tiny. Let's say you lived a life that was sinful. Ma'at would be huge. So there's this weighing of the feather versus your sins. And like, if you lived a bad life and you're heavier, you got to fight the Ringmaster. Either way, you got to fight the Ringmaster, but you got to fight a bigger Ringmaster. And if your heart is heavy and if you lived a sinful life, Amit the Devourer will devour you. So the Ringmaster is essentially this Egyptian mythology, this Egyptian theme, if you get my point. So I just think it's interesting how do you explain the Ringmaster? You go to look at Osiris as the weigher of good and bad. And we'll talk about how Riddlebox fits different mythology, Malenko, the Jekyll brothers. It's all about this good versus bad. And I think it's a really cool wake-up call that's just like an awesome fairy tale, an awesome story. Not that these are fairy tales, but that's why these stories are universal. That's the Ringmaster. That's the backstory. Let's get it popping. Let's talk about the songs. Murder Go Round, Shaggy talks about forks up, forks down, right? And that's like what the Ringmaster was about. ICP was about uniting the different gangs. That was like the different gangs in Detroit were either forks up or forks down, but forks up, forks down, forks sideways. Shaggy's uniting everyone. And then it has a merry-go-round theme that's sampled. Forks up, forks down, man, forks sideways. Chicken Huntin'. Now this song is interesting because it's the first version, which was later remixed for Riddlebox, and this is Chicken Huntin' is about hunting races, which is very pertinent. And they had F Your Rebel Flag earlier on. ICP is against racism. They're about inclusion and community and family love, and this song reflects that. Mr. Johnson's Head was used for the Hallowicked 1997 compilation, the remix, and was on Forgotten Freshness Volume 2. This is the original version, and I like this song because it's a violent reaction to being taught about racism and being taught fake things about society and about America. Jay talks about how he hung a rebel flag in the classroom, so he had to decapitate him because he was celebrating racism and division and spreading lies about how everyone in the world is equal when this isn't necessarily true. It may be something we're all working towards, but Violent J's like, no, we got to take a stand. You're teaching us about Christopher Columbus. You're not teaching us about important figures. Southwest Song. What's up with Southwest Song? So, this song samples Right On for the Darkness by Curtis Mayfield, and it famously samples the monkeys from Wizard of Oz. Oh, wee, oh, oh, which Tech Nine would later sample on his song Einstein.
Waking enough as it is. Who's them? Who's them?
Cause I'm not alone. It didn't take me long to see everybody singing that Southwest song.
Southwest Song. So when Violent J and Shaggy used to hang out at the Joe Louis Arena, they tried to get autographs, and they started hanging out with Rudy and staying with his parents and started feeling more community in the southwest side of Detroit. So they always claim Southwest Detroit. I mean, one of their new artists, Big Hoodoo, is from Southwest Detroit. They Southwest Voodoo from Great Malenko. So Southwest Song, this is a classic. So let's skip ahead to Side B, Macabre. Now, this is the more dark side of the album, and I like this. This is my favorite part of the record, Side B. Let's talk about some of my favorite songs from this. My Funhouse. This song features Jumpsteady, the legendary Robert Bruce, and this song samples Bullet in the Head by Rage Against the Machine. Now, Rage Against the Machine was getting more famous. They were touring with Wu-Tang Clan around this time, and they were big, but ICP sampled this track, and I remember hearing it. I was like, oh, it's a Rage sample. That's tight. It's probably Mikey Clark's taste, but they sound great rapping on it. Wagon Wagon. Oh, this is this is one of the top ICP songs. The Wagon, the Ringmaster's driving this hearse. He's picking up souls that he's gonna fight. He's picking up dead bodies that he's gonna fight. If you're good, you know what happens. If you're bad, you know what happens, right? So Wagon Wagon, I love this song. And this is a classic. The beat is funky. It's one of their best tracks. He says, I can freak the cello like Chris Connolly on bass, right? And this is the guitarist on In the How, not the guy from Saves the Day. I always thought it was the same person, but I don't think it is. I can freak the cello like Chris Connolly on bass. He talks about the people that the wagon has room for, Mr. Nevers, and this was a white officer who had beaten an innocent black man to death. So more history. I mean, ICP's dropping this knowledge of this history of political and social events, and I think that's worth noting. I had to look up Mr. Nevers, but that's who that is. Track 12, The Loons. Ooh. If you're from California or the East Coast and you haven't spent a lot of time like up north or in the Midwest, I've started to learn that the loon is a bird that's really associated with like the Great Lakes, with Maine. It's like my friend Spose had a shirt with a loon on it, and that is like a specific bird, right? A specific bird that's endemic to this regional area. So the Loons is also like if you're Looney Tunes, you're crazy. So the Loons is based on this folktale, this old like American folktale where this guy escapes from the mental ward. He keeps calling. I remember in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, he keeps calling this babysitter. He's like, I'm gonna get you. I'm 5 blocks away. I'm 2 blocks away. I'm 1 block away. She calls the operator, and the operator's like, yo, the guy's on the upstairs phone. It's so creepy. So I'm the net cutter, and I'm 3 blocks away. I'm the net cutter, 3 blocks. He gets closer and closer, but just like in The Stalker, he doesn't get his victim. There's like if in ICP stories, like I said, when they're stalking an innocent person, the villain is often caught. I love the line, because somebody's clock is running out of talk. That's onomatopoeia, that's multisyllabic rhymes, that's assonance, that's consonants, and it's a great metaphor. Like you're running out of time. Somebody's clock is running out of talk. Everything you've ever done to me is out of hate. You slam your golden gate. And I think about like Silicon Valley and the tech industry and like the division of haves and have-nots, the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, that's what this line makes me think of. But the imagery in the song, the flow, the energy, the crazy breakdown, the samples, it's dope as heck. And you will recognize the hello from The Stalker. House of Mirrors features Capital E, a local rapper. Twisted would later get inspired by this. They call their album Mirror Mirror. Yeah, House of Mirrors. Okay, you go in the House of Mirrors, you see yourself, you reflect yourself, you see the deeds you've done before you go see Ringmaster. Everything on this album is so well crafted. It's crazy. You might think it's just like random, funny, psychopathic, wicked rhymes, but it's deeper than that. Finally, we end with Ringmaster's Word. The sample is the Pothead Pixies by Gong.
They come and go.
I have a purpose.
So that's what's up with the Ringmaster. We're setting up the karma, setting up the flavor, setting up the freshness. It's a great sounding record, super well produced, one of my favorites, an important one in the catalog. Okay, so that's all for Hatchet Chat this week. I'm MC Lars. The Insane Clown Posse mean so much to me. Please click to subscribe if you haven't already. Please spread the word, and here we go. Next week, we got the Terror Wheel. Stay tuned. Peace. I'm MC Lars. Whoop, whoop. Thanks, family. Somebody's clock is running out of talk. It's so dope.